Title of my talk is stupidly long, overly complicated, but basically we're going to be talking about, conceptually at least, future supply chains of medicinal plants. I'm not going to be talking about any particular psychedelics in particular, but we're going to be kind of talking about frameworks and just kind of think about it in the context of psychedelics, and let's just get a kind of different discussion going on. I've said from the garden to the blockchain, and I kind of put in the fourth industrial revolution bit just because in case there's any conspiracy theories about, and the people have been reading about the Great Reset and Klaus Schwab from the Economic Forum and all that. I think this kind of links into it nicely. But I guess before I get going, I just, based on what Danny was talking about, all these network effects and all these kind of, nodes and connections in the natural environment, I'm going to be talking a lot about digital technologies, things that don't, on the surface, seem to necessarily, when we're thinking about food and crops and things we eat and consume and medicinal plants, we don't necessarily like to think of it in this kind of futuristic manner of where it will come from in the future. And yeah, I think the kind of stuff that Danny's doing, I think is so important to prevent us from going down a bit of a dystopian path in the future when it comes to our food and medicine production. So just kind of keep that in mind. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get this idea out here. Just more to get people thinking about this kind of stuff. So here we've got a flower of licorice root, and I've just put that there to basically tell you a bit about myself. So I'm doing a PhD at the moment, doing medicinal natural products chemistry. I'm looking at food supply chains. My background was in neuroscience. Decided I didn't really want to be cutting up brains and things like that, and I'd rather be cutting up plants. I'm a bit hypocritical. I mean, I still eat meat and things like that, but I just didn't. Didn't really like the neuroscience field. Left that, and now I've been basically looking at natural products and the chemistry inside natural products for quite some time. And maybe I'm not going to go into any boring chemistry, don't worry. But it kind of brings me to what I'm talking about now, because when I first started a few years ago, in order to do chemistry I was looking at, for example, cannabis products. We were doing NMR spectroscopy, which was a massive, it's got liquid helium, it's not very mobile. It's in the basement of a university building in central London, testing plants that are grown halfway across the world or wherever in this equipment. That doesn't make sense to where loads of our food and plants and things like that come from, or remote areas. So this is just to remind me to say that a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today is kind of schematic. And I looked up the definition of schematic, and I thought it was just quite interesting, but of a diagram or other representation, symbolic and simplified. I thought, we're at a psychedelic conference, we like symbols. Maybe I'll give some symbols about the technology that's used in food and agriculture. So miniaturization of technology is kind of what brought me to this question. I was using this big equipment in the basement of a school of pharmacy, and you're not going to be able to take that to a field or an agricultural site in India to be able to test products. So as part of my research, I've been looking at kind of handheld and portable devices that people could then take out to remote areas, tropical climates, wherever, and be able to analyze plants and basically look at some of the plant chemistry, but outside, away. So it's away from the bench in kind of westernized, generally quite like economically advantaged areas and into the field. This computer, this diagram basically just shows several things, but it's basically only until recently, the number of installed computer devices has shot up rapidly, but the nodes, everything's becoming miniaturized, you know, on our phones, all of the microchips, the ASICs, the application-specific chips are just, basically they're becoming smaller, the technology is getting better, and it's facilitating these kind of complicated lab equipments to be, you know, basically handheld and, you know, smaller, which basically opens up a whole other avenue of science which isn't really explored. This has only really happened in the past few years. And a lot of this equipment is really expensive. So as the price is dropping, you know, people are going to have more access to this kind of equipment. This was just a quick note to bear in mind basically the complexity of a plant product. So I'm looking at licorice. You know, out of the licorice root, you can make lots of different types of traditional preparations. You can make food, sweets, you can make medical products, cough syrups. You can make special flavorings, a lot of sugar-free, like non-carbohydrate-based flavorings that go into like gym supplements and things like that. And they just say natural flavoring on the back. Could be from something like licorice root. They're legally not, they don't have to say it's licorice root. And yeah, so these things are complex when we're thinking about them. So I don't know what time it is. If I'm just rambling, I've got 20 minutes. Yeah, wicked. So who's heard of Internet of Things? Yeah, so you're familiar with this concept already, but I just wanted to bring it up if you weren't familiar with it. But it's basically all the devices and the mass sum of the kind of technology products that can link into the internet. And it's going to be, and is already, a key part of farming and agriculture. And I guess it's like, you know, here is Oracle Network, which is basically a massive computer, you know, IT company. But I just thought it was interesting. So they describe it as the network of physical objects and things embedded with sensors, software, and technologies for the purposes of connecting and exchanging data with other systems and devices on the internet. Then it goes on to say they're expecting this number of devices to grow to 10 billion by 2020 and 22 billion by 2025. So just the connecting of all these devices is increasing rapidly. And well, that's obviously, you know, a little bit old. I would probably guess that the adoption is happening, you know, even more rapidly. So this is a kind of very basic diagram I made when I first started looking into this stuff, but it's a schematic diagram of a supply chain. So you can see on one side, you've got farmers, then you've got processors, distributors, retailers, customers, and regulators, okay? Most of the like chemical quality control, okay, especially, you know, in somewhere like the UK, it happens at the end. It's all like end control, you know. Most of it, you know, some of it might happen in the middle with distributors and retailers, but when you talk about medicinal natural products, and especially things that go into pharmaceutical drugs, most of it is happening right at the end. Whereas with, obviously, you know, botanical-based products, they're often being grown in very remote regions, like I said, where there's not much access to, like, you know, quality assessment, at least, you know, in an advanced technological sense. So it kind of got me thinking, you know, how can we bring with these portable devices some analysis earlier on in the supply chain? Because basically, the earlier, if you're a company producing medicinal natural products, you know, and herbal medicines, if you get poor quality ingredients, you know, or just fake products, you're not going to be able to help people. You're not going to be able to make effective or safe medicines. So the earlier on in the supply chain, where you could basically reject or accept your, you know, materials good quality, will help you, you know, achieve your goals, which is hopefully to, you know, produce good and effective medicines that are sustainably produced. So there's this whole question of all the quality assurance and quality control happening at the end. And basically, it is shifting closer and closer to you know, the earlier stages. I'm not going to, this is just a ridiculous diagram that I found on the internet showing the complexity of basically like food networks. But you look at a specific plant and it's complex when you look at a simplified supply chain. If you look at the wider the broader market of a plant, it gets very difficult, especially when you're talking about farming the plant. So there's complexity in the genetics, or whether it's seeds, whether it's tissue culture, whatever it is. What are you growing your plant for? There'll be different plant parts. If you're growing it for the root, you're going to kill that plant first of all to harvest the root. You're also going to destroy the soil, right? And so there's an environmental aspect to it. You're going it for the stem, or is it a bark of a tree or something? The different plant parts of the one plant is an important thing to factor into. That should say the next one, different plant species. But for example, with licorice, there's thought to be like hundreds of species. There's like 2 or 3 main species of licorice that are traded, and sometimes they switch them in and out. And the licorice that's used in traditional Chinese medicine is different from most of the Western European licorice. So there's complexities there. There's obviously different environments, plants harvested in different temperatures, different altitudes, different soil environments, all create kind of they all create plants with different characteristics that you may or may not want. There's enormous product variation in the end, and then importantly, there's massive issues and complexities with things like biopiracy. Basically, there's massive ethical implications, and for me, it's mad when I see some of these psychedelic companies, and I'm sure some people are floating about at this conference, especially from the US. They're talking about AI, drug discovery, and making drugs from botanical products, and it's there's like no ethical discussions, or very little, and that's a whole other that's a whole other issue. But biopiracy is a massive problem, and needs to be spoken about more, especially in the context of psychedelics, of course. It's conceptual, so thanks for bearing with me. We're going to be basically talking about some value chains that you can kind of think about in the context of psychedelics as well. But just to broadly put it, you've got something like the local healer chain, which is basically if you've got a grower or a collector or a processor, and they're selling it straight on to a patient, right? So that might be, I don't know, if you're in someone's garden and you get you've got a cough or a cold, and somebody harvests a plant and makes you something straight away. There's only one step. It's a simple supply chain. It's a simple value chain. Let's be real, with regulations and things like that, direct, small supply chain is unlikely to have too many quality control issues, right? And it should be allowed, direct to the patients. And then you've got basically more kind of local and national type supply chains where things get a bit more complicated, right? So you've got growers, you've got the processors, you've got healers, and then you've got patients or the consumers at the end. Or in a national level, there might be secondary middlemen and different marketplaces where people buy these crops. And then there's more steps there for error or dilution or mislabeling of products, especially in a medical context where you want transparency and you want to be able to trust what you're taking. I'm not going to go into these too much, but there's different kinds of industry chains and it gets really complicated. But loosely put, when you go to the supermarket and you buy lots of fruits and vegetables from Sainsbury's, or you buy your turmeric powder, they're buying it all from pretty much the same small batch of suppliers who, are based in like South India and places like that. There's not, they will be buying it on massive quantities and they're splitting it down. They've got distributors, they've got logistics, but it will affect, the value of the product goes up so much for them because they repackage it and process it. And there's loads of points where, you know, a poor quality product can result. For example, you know, if people are holding on to it because they know the price of turmeric might increase next year, they might hold back some of their stock, and then, you know, 1 year later they can make more money on it. So they sell that turmeric 1 year later. But basically the idea is to think about the complexities of the value chain. So future farming, this is basically, I've had a bit of an intense week of conferences. I went to a conference at the start of this week, and I was thinking about this talk before, and then I realized that there are people already doing futuristic farming. So this is basically a picture of a drone, which apparently is common practice in farming, but basically drones will apply things like fertilizer, and they say it's a lot more efficient than going around, you know, applying it with one guy with a hose or whatever. They also use satellite imagery to harvest crops and send in pickers, but you know, it doesn't just end there, because they can also they will link the satellite imagery to local weather stations and things like that, and, you know, feed it into computers, and basically they've got, you know, AI, machine learning. They're all buzzwords now, but they use them to kind of guide and process and make them more efficient. You know, corporate agricultural scale make, you know, I was hearing people throw numbers around like 42% more efficient farming using some of these methods. Then I learned about this company called Dogtooth Robotics. It's a bit of a weird name, but it's a robotic strawberry picker that's operating in the UK. So if you're eating strawberries at the moment, your strawberries might have been harvested by a robot. And it basically lives in these greenhouses and goes along rails, and it has cameras. It will basically analyze the strawberry, it will pick them, and, you know, a few years ago there was a workers' crisis in the UK where people were talking about there was a lack of people to pick fruits and vegetables. This is one of the companies that basically came in, and they're trying to fill that gap. Now, that's in the UK. Think about foods and things which aren't grown in the UK. You know, tea that's grown in a massive tea estate in Kenya, or, you know, these kind of things. I just want to show you a few of their website taglines that I was looking at before, which I couldn't believe it's kind of this transparent, but it's like, you know, working closely with UK growers. They've been developing commercial robotic fruit picking solutions since 2016. You know, their web portal allows complete control of your robot fleet. Gain real-time insight into the crop conditions, remotely adjust ripeness, grading settings, trade-off between wastage, extraction rate, picking seeds. You know, these are like complex tasks that these robots can do now. And it's all powered by AI and machine learning, and it's all, I mean, it's happening. You know, and they say that last bit, augmenting our valued seasonal workforce. You know, like, what a crazy term. It's like, you know, I don't know, I don't know how you feel about that, but it just, yeah, did they? It might be me when I copied and pasted. No, but, yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. So it's, you know, this is happening now, and, you know, before I get into some more schematics, we like to think, you know, we have this kind of notion, oh, there's, you know, and it's already happened with medical cannabis, but, you know, I've never been to the Amazon or tried ayahuasca. You know, I'm born and bred in London. I haven't really gone out that much of London. I've got London-centric mindset, but that ayahuasca vine, I don't know if it will be, or, you know, your peyote buttons, don't know if they're going to be, you know, sourced from the jungle. They probably will be grown in some sort of warehouse if you're not careful with a robotic picker by some of these companies that are already, you know, invested in psychedelic pharmaceutical medicine, and it's not small money. You look at, you know, it's the money coming from Peter Thiel Capital, whatever. You know, it's tens of millions. I think 100 million one round of funding. It's like big corporate interests, and they won't care. I don't think. At the end of the day, they want to work within regulations. Anyway, so this is where my kind of diagram got a bit complicated. The one I showed you before kind of turned into this one at the end of doing some research. And it's basically, I had a lot of fun making this. It actually took me ages. I got the images from this good project, Noun project, but, with IoT devices, and they're already collecting location coordinates of wild harvest sites, humidity, weather data, they track the logistics, processing information of any chemical processes going on, all this kind of stuff. And then towards the end, users are accessing it with a smartphone, and they're scanning a product in wherever, and they can say, okay, well, this is organic, this is not, but this is where it's going to go to and where it's going to come from. When fraud and bad actors, incumbents, or people who are just selling fake CBD products, or I read something the other day. There was a green olive scandal where basically they're selling fake green olives with a green dye in there in order to basically, make the olives more appealing. When these kind of systems kick in, the way it's being sold is that this will be able to be dealt with. I wanted to talk about blockchain, but I don't think I've got too much time, which is I've got 5 minutes, 6 minutes. Okay, so I'll just whiz through it. But here's a picture of this. There's a company called Chainlink. I thought this was really spooky, but basically their whole narrative is this concept of going from truth to trust using blockchain. So rather than truth is greater than trust, going from trust to truth, and it's basically you'll get your data fed with some sort of digital system, and rather than trusting your organic coffee beans at home are organic, there will be medical or some sort of analytical device that will tell you whether there's an inorganic pesticide in it or whatever. So no longer, it's like a trustless system that will be fed by data networks to be able to basically, allow provenance and authenticity to flourish. They're not working in supply chains directly, but they're working in data networks to be able to feed it in. Now, there's DeFi and payments, which are basically, there's people already working on it, but you won't be able to get your beer, for example, delivered, or you won't get paid if it's, outside a certain temperature range. They reject the payment. So the delivery driver will need to keep the barrels of beer within a certain temperature range, that kind of thing. Web 3.0, and basically there's legal implications for this too. Is code law, and how will disputes and things like that arise? This was Amazon Web Services on blockchain and supply chains. I won't go into it now, but basically use cases, food and agriculture, pharmaceuticals, manufacturing, and mining. And they talk over there in the small print about authenticity, sourcing, or basically mining in a sustainable way using blockchain. It's all a bit far out, really, but people are using it for this, and that's part of their claim. So I want you to I'm going to finish on this idea. Just think about the ethics and the moral implications of this. It's almost inevitable. The people who and the companies that are working on this, especially when it comes to food, argue that we've got a growing population. This is what we need. We just need to increase efficiency. And a lot of people in these local communities, they don't want to be farming. They want to be doing other stuff. There's the sustainable and ecological implications of it. Might it make farming more sustainable or not? Some people claim it will. Some people claim it won't. And then I just want to say it's not just food. There's, Danny mentioned bows on instruments, but there's this whole idea of economic botany. You've got wooden panels in front of you, all our clothes, loads of things are made from plants. We're disconnected from it. I just told you I grew up in London and I've never been to the Amazon or anything. I'm totally disconnected from it, but everything is made from plants. So one last idea is the idea of neoliberalism in tech. Is blockchain really a new solution? A database can work as good as blockchain. So if it's in a public ledger and you've got fake products, do you really want all that information public? The companies don't. And there's kind of more politics than technology, in my opinion. And the last thing I'll leave you with is I'm doing my PhD at UCL, and Jeremy Bentham designed this Panopticon. Have you heard of this? The Panopticon, yeah. So is this new dawning of the fourth industrial revolution, this new age of medicine with psychedelics, is it just another kind of digital Panopticon, with Facebook? And, basically a new way of basically getting everyone to comply and feel like they're always, I don't know, I don't have time to go into the whole idea of the Panopticon, but basically it's a new, digital surveillance in a way, not in a conspiratorial way, but it's also to get people to comply and not, to operate within certain standards. Yeah, and that's the message. And it's not all doom and gloom. It kind of sounds a bit crazy, but I brought a packet of strawberries the other day, and they still tasted good, and I enjoyed the strawberries, even though I did grimace at the idea that they might be harvested by that robot. But nonetheless, it was very, it was still nice. I put a picture up there of GW's cannabis grow, because basically it's happened in cannabis and it's going to happen in psychedelics too. So yeah, just be aware of it and let's get a conversation going. That's me done. Thank you.